Welcome back, audience. Hope you're doing good, as always. And I got a good one for you today. A really good one. I want to talk about relationship between you and the rest of the reality, the things and people, and how does the calibration or alchemy comes into this picture of what is actually going on. That desire to sort of change another person, how to deal with that, and how to change a thing, how to change your environment, right? That desire to change things or people. How does it really work without you becoming a puppet master? And also without you sort of like leaking energy, right? By trying to be kind with somebody who's kind of just abusing your kindness. Or just being sort of domineering or tyrannical to somebody who is letting you abuse them, right? That type of imbalanced energy exchange that's going on between people. And so it's like, how do you handle all of that? The first thing I want to say about this is the coherence that we're talking about and what is actually going on when you are calibrating the energy in respect to the feeling that arises inside of you, whether you're dealing with the person and coming across that deep fragmented energy within you, which is them, right? What is actually going on when you're calibrating that energy? So what I found out to be the case is you are not actually changing that person's fragmentation, so to speak. What you're doing is you are compensating for the lack of fragmentation through your own calibration of consciousness, which creates a type of identity that you have that's kind of flexible and you can change any way it's necessary. And that philosopher's stone, which is alive, becomes possible in respect to the fragmentation of somebody who went very, very dark, for example. So what is the approach? What is your relationship with the person who is very dark or somewhat dark or bright or whatever? What is your relationship to them, energetically speaking? Is there a coherence between you and that person? Now, the coherence does not mean that you just accepted that person to do whatever they want because, accept it. Let it go, let it be. No. You're also not brute forcing and trying to change it through the will either, right? Because those are the two approaches that sometimes people have. That simping and that tyrannical approach, right? But you are playing this video game, you are in this reality, and the point of it all is to figure out of how this can be done. So coherent type of connection is the key. And you're trying to find that coherent type of connection, but without trying to change the energy of a person that is holding. They might be like very painful energy, but nevertheless, what happens when you calibrate it, you don't try to change it in like a mind that's like, okay, this is painful, let's turn it into not painful. This is not how it works. This is painful. Now, what kind of shape can I take that pain is bliss, for example, or peace, for example? So now you are approaching it very differently. You're not intending it to change. You are just merging to the missing pieces to derive that type of coherent state. There might be reluctance to do this because you say like, well, that person is supposed to be doing this, that person is supposed to change, stuff like that. Well, it turns out that that's not how it works, that people do not change unless you change as them, which is quite crazy, because I was realizing that what is going on there when I'm establishing this type of connection to any kind of person. They don't have to be even present in your life, whatever, but you have that relationship to all types of people that are fragmented. And you're not saying like, well, they're supposed to get your act, they're supposed to get your act, they're supposed to get their act together, and it's not my responsibility, stuff like that. This is not what kind of game we're playing, as it turns out. But you can accomplish that type of coherent connection with that person. Does not mean that you're neither kind or nice or tyrannical towards that person. You are appropriate towards it, right? You're not leaking the energy anymore. Whereas before they may be getting annoyed and it's like, and they're leaking the energy, right? And so you're fueling that one way. Or you are just trying to brute force is leaking the energy that way. You see? This does not work like that. So that appropriate coherent connection is the key. It's the most just possible connection that you can. So don't worry that the person is gonna get away with something. No, it won't get away with nothing, with anything, if you completely go into the depths of their soul and pull out all of that fragmentation and alchemize it, which is calibration, into the coherence without changing it. You are becoming the missing parts. This is what the calibration is all about. You're becoming the missing parts. You're not trying to change this. This is very different how the mind works. The mind wants to change it, and that's legit and it's supposed to change. Mind, or your body in the world of the mind, wants to make the environment fit to it. Perfectly fine. Here, you have to fit the environment. Your you-ness, that essence. And so it's not an intention, it is attention, awareness, expansion, contraction. Those are 4 faculties of consciousness capable of finding that coherence within that, whether it is pain, which is fire, whether it's this poison, which is water, and all of these disbalances, right? Because when the fire is a little bit too much or too little, when the water is too much or too little, you see what I'm trying to say? Always like this, you got to find that perfect balance. Equilibrium. Coherence, actually. But the equilibrium happens after. Once you establish that coherent connection with the person is going to start moving towards the equilibrium automatically, and their life trajectory is going to change because of this. There's an actual change that's going on. You are not just like looking at this person and say like, well, that person is so messed up, and you say like, well, everybody has a right to express the way they want. It's like, really? Or you may say, no, you gotta stop that person. You can't, that person cannot get away with this shit, and then you go another way, right? This is not it. You're not letting that person get away with anything, but you're also not being tyrannical. You're establishing the coherent relationship with that person. It may be super fragmented. In fact, the deeper the fragmented that entity is, the more of a catalyst is for your alchemy, and the more of a more flexible stone and more stronger or more adaptable stone that you could have. Now, the stone is an actual structure of consciousness that is a paradox. It's not supposed to exist, but it does exist, and this is why we're working on that alchemy, right? Because it's like neutron star. It's a paradox. It is in between the solid and the ambient, between the super hot vibration and super cold, right? And in fact, like there are only 4 fundamental forces of physics, and they're not the ones that the people are talking about. They're just 4. And there's the gravity, there's this expansion, there is this vibration, which we know this as fire, as heat, and flow, which we know this as water, right? Or cold, actually. And so you have neutron star that appears to be kind of like solid, but it's neither solid, neither ambient, neither hot, neither cold. And it's this paradoxical thing, this pearl, which is Perla Mutra, is that name that is given to that capacity to spring out all these possible permutations of patterns and colors as it's necessary. And so we're working on that pearl. That's what we're working on. And it is completely related to everybody that you see in your environment. This is what I've been sort of dealing with, and I was saying, like, okay, you start recognizing the people that going backwards and pretending that they're going the right way and all this. Like, what do you do with that stuff? Like, you can't just go out there and what are you gonna tell them? So like, hey, stop doing that. They're gonna change? No. What else you can do? And so you're like, well, it is what it is. Let's just be with the flow. Let's go with the flow. No to either of those. But you can establish a right type of connection, which is that coherence. And you can make sure, if you do have that, which is like you completely attentive of that person, their essence, and you still find the coherence between you and that person, that is what you want. This is the best effect in a person because the person will be affected. And it's the best thing for you because you establish the coherent field. Now you can work on external things and work on correcting things if it's necessary, externally. Because in coherence is what's important within you and anybody or anything. Coherence is the point of this calibration. Like I said, is you're not trying to change them because this is the mistake, because mind does that, right? Because people say, well, I feel that feeling and I'm trying to change it, and it just makes it worse. You gotta not do that. You gotta understand that you're not trying to change it. You're trying to become a perfect type of missing pieces and the energy that is necessary. And the capacity for you to take that shape, to structure yourself like that, once you decipher that thing, that is a contribution to that philosopher's stone. Something that is intemporal, yet has the paradoxical capacities of infinity. The pearl. With everybody. At first I thought, well, if I'm just gonna establish this type of coherence with everybody, then what's in it for me? No, the fact is, what's in it for me is feeling good about everything, not just letting it slide, but facing everything to the bone of it and still finding coherence about it. People should go with the flow. This is not going with the flow. Flow is just 1/4 of the things. Flow is necessary, vibration is necessary, expansion is necessary, and contraction or gravity is necessary. And you are capable of doing all of those with your consciousness. You're capable of unlocking all of those different things and still finding coherence with everything. Now that's the goal. Okay? Now, what's in it for you? establishing coherence with anybody, with everybody, no matter what they're talking about, what they're doing, or whether they're going the right way or the wrong way. It does not matter anymore. It's sort of like they will be affected in the most positive way. What's in it for you? I'll tell you what's in it for you. Because when people are affected in this coherent way, and as they begin changing everything in their life to come into the equilibrium. Right now, equilibrium happens after you accomplish the coherence. You're not asking this evil person to be good. You're finding their energy, you're finding that evilness, that fragmentation, all the reasons why they're doing all of that, mechanical way, alchemizing all of that, unlocking all of that. It begins changing that person. They may not be interested in those evil shit that they did before. They may have the insight and say like, oh my God, this is not right, fuck. Or there's a better way of doing things, or run out of luck and forced not to engage in this type of endeavor. That's what happens when you accomplish coherence with a person. They may not even know you. It does not matter. That's the thing about the alchemy, that it's non-local. You can do it anywhere, about anybody, anytime. Okay? And so it takes the view that all the fragmentation in the entire world is your fragmentation. Everyone may be a little bit different, but you want to build that philosopher's stone that it is capable of unlocking all of those. It will leave no enemies in your life. There might be opponents, but there will be no enemies anymore. And this is what may lead to this life that we call effortless. The work that you do calibrating may be challenging at first. God damn, it is very challenging, and it's okay. But the message of a story, it is quite simple. You want to have coherence with anybody. You may meet a person and you may tune into their energy and you may find that like, oh, this is like a lot of stale water. Sometimes I meet women like that. There's a lot of stale water, and automatically they become more like a phallic type of woman because their water is stale. So they compensate it with becoming rigid and having too much earth. And so they become so-called phallic woman, right? Or phallic mother archetype. And you find that type of incoherence within the person, and it feels, you know, how it feels. It's like a poison, like a stale water. And without trying to change that thing, you're looking like, well, can I find this golden lining about this thing where I shape myself into this form where that becomes coherent, therefore blissful and peaceful, without trying to change it. Poof, you find about that. And it is one of the ways to describe of what you're actually doing. You're not changing it. You are becoming a compensatory thing for it, which is a very different thing than working on it, trying to change it. And it doesn't seem like you can do that. You know, changing another person does not work, you know, unless you become them. So now it brings me into this idea, everybody is you pushed out like never God was talking about, but and this omnipotence and maybe solipsism that people may misunderstand, and without the calibration, you cannot see this. This is why if you're not calibrating, none of these things that even what the Jesus was talking about will make sense to you. You're gonna misunderstand. Like, do unto others like you want them to do unto you. What are you gonna do? You're gonna go treat people nicely, and some of them just gonna freaking abuse you and treat you even worse and think that you're a freaking fool, right? So that's misinterpretation, because everything that Jesus was talking about, according to those scriptures and whatnot, was pointing to the alchemy. He was an alchemist. He was just an alchemist, and what later people made out of them, this imaginary fucking friend and some idol or whatever, that would be the complete opposite of what he would like it to be. And some say that Krishnamurti was a reincarnation of the same soul, which is not really a soul, but you see what I'm trying to say, like a same memory complex, or the same individual unit of consciousness, or whatever you want to call it, because technically it's not a soul. And what did he do? He said, there will be no idolizing me. It's not about me. I'm sending a message. I'm telling you of how to live this life, how to calibrate your consciousness. And if I'm not personally related to you, I'm not in your life, do not turn me into this imaginary friend that and that you use it to pacify. Do not do that. And with his foundations and everything, he gave clear instructions that there will be none of that shit. That is going to be just the message. And if you're not personally related to that person, do not keep it in life. And that's legit. And this is how, a lot of people may be, smelling some old guru's farts, but they're supposed to be around their people, their friends, their relatives, living life, learning how to calibrate, the consciousness, and learning how to better relationships and things like that, legitimately, without trying to change them like externally, and how to make a real change. A real change can be made, and I'm going to get into this, but I'm just saying, don't make the mockery out of this. Others can do that, but not you, because you're listening. Okay? So now we arrived at this conclusion that it is about matching up the missing pieces within your heart. That's how you accomplish the coherence. It is only one soul, one ego, and when you're alchemizing, you become the environment that is necessary for you to become. You become that missing piece in the environment, not the self, so to speak. And then therefore that resolution happens. Now, once you have that resolution, what just happened? You kind of became that person on a soul level, because you felt exactly how they feel deep down inside. You found the solution of that thing, and now you are basically in that coherence. There's no difference between you and that person. Now, what do? That gives you the right, because now you are them. So you're not going to do anything that is bad, hurtful for you, because it's you. And that gives you an authority to change a person, because you're not going to change it just like to fit yourself selfishly. You're going to change it because it is there naturally and it's mutual. Does that make sense? Because if you don't calibrate, if you don't become them first, and you say, well, I want to control that person, I want to make him do this or that, well, that may not be in their soul, may not be in what they truly want to do. But if you become that person, you immediately see what they want to do, and then you oblige that. And if it's nothing to do with you, then you have to just let that be like that. And if it is something to do with you, and you see that there is a mutual desire there, then that gives you the right to manifest that thing, because it's mutual. You see? And that's when you're not a puppet master, even though everybody is you. It is, look, what I'm saying here, it's pretty bonkers. But it's true. And you cannot touch this thing that I'm talking about without alchemy, without calibration. It's very difficult. You got to pay your dues. But when you pay your dues, you can touch that thing. Because now you can become anybody. And you would only act as anybody if that would be you. Again, now that saying, do unto others what you like them to do unto you, makes sense. You become another human being. And then, as another human being, you can create something, right? But it has to be in the volition of that another human being. It is you, it's your volition, but you as another human being, you know, like, oh, that's the thing that I want. Okay, if it's coinciding with your version of the reality, and if it's mutual, then that gives you the right to create a movie when there is a mutual interaction between you and that person. Because that desire was there already. You're not imposing anything externally. It was there already. You discovered that to be the case. Okay? Because there's only one soul, one ego, and that's why upon complete calibration of consciousness, you become that person. And there is this type of correcting mechanism. You know, people say like the reality is your mirror. It is so untrue. And you'd be like, well, if the reality is my mirror and I see all this dysfunction, am I so freaking dysfunctional? Me as that, body self. The answer is like, well, no. I would have to take responsibility for the entire thing, and then I would have to say that I am dysfunctional like this, because everybody, if there's any kind of dysfunction in the world, it's my dysfunction. Right? But if you say that does not necessarily correct things. You have to become that correcting mechanism, that lens, because consciousness is a holographic projection. It's a toroidal holographic projection. And it goes from this negative film through the lens onto projection screen. This always functions like that. So when that thing is a negative film messed up, the only thing that you can do to have a right projection on the screen is if correcting the lens. Lens is that philosopher's stone. And when you correct the lens, then you have the right type of image projected on the screen due to your own correction of it. That produces necessity to grow the crystal of your soul, so to speak. The crystal that is capable of changing all sorts of permutations to correct into coherence. Now, when you are correcting into the coherence and you're projecting something that is the image that is corrected, over time, that negative film also starts changing, and then it's projecting the right thing without your correction needed. because that lens does something. Lens, when it corrects like that, it deletes what's necessary to be deleted. It records something that is necessary to be recorded, stores what is necessary to be stored, and so it becomes this correcting mechanism for that distortion of the time fractals that are, within your heart, which is a separation or fragmentation is what causes this suffering or negative feelings or uncomfortable feelings within you. It's an actual matter what is supposed to be ether, and so you can sort of correct for it. And then as you're correcting for it, eventually it comes into the equilibrium. Now, exact mechanisms how it works, I'm studying this. But without you first becoming that, you cannot unlock this authority or that power to make a change, because how would you make a change? How would you know what is better? But once you establish the coherence gives you an authority, because coherence itself is the authority that's telling you what is better. And it's just you let the coherence do its thing. Okay, that may take time. That's why you don't insist upon this to make a sort of like a quick change, but give it time. It will change. All right, guys. I'm going to keep it short in this video. Hopefully it makes sense. Hopefully it makes sense, this concept of everybody's you pushed out and all that stuff. This is only true if you're calibrating your consciousness. Other than that, if you are still functioning in the mind, this is nonsense. Mind does not work like that. Mind works on the intention and always tries to fit the environment to itself. The body always wants the environment to fit itself. The body always wants the mind, which is your environment, to fit itself. The soul works differently. It wants to fit the environment. That's the calibration part of it. The pneumatic world, calibrating world for the coherence, and then mechanical world for the correctness. We work in both of these worlds, and we only when we have the coherence could we go into the correctness. Right? If you do not have the coherence established with that person, that energy that is kind of ready to record something new, and only then you have the insight of what is correct, then you start recording, say like, this is correct, this is how we're going to do this, this is the right thing, this is fair, this is just, this is how we're going to get the most out of this. And then now you're creating the new type of interactions, boundaries, culture, art, music, science, this way, right? This is fascinating because it is ethical. You cannot be asshole, because if you want to make any change in any person, first you have to become them. This is such a great check for ego, because, all right, you want to change him? Okay, go ahead, change him. You're going to have to become them. You're going to have to go through all of that incoherence there, deal with all of that. That will give you the right, then, quote unquote, to change them. And the only way you're going to change them is that if it's mutual, right? Because at first you wanted that person to do something that you wanted, but then after you become them, after you calibrate this energy, you may say like, well, that person actually wants this. It is you, so of course you want that, right? as them. So you're not gonna say like, well, but that's not what this other me wants. So you're gonna acknowledge and let this you have what it wants. And it may not include that other version of you, which you're playing this as a character. But most of the time it probably will. Otherwise, why would you, be even catalyzed and triggered by it? But that checks for the something, if you would be them, would you want that? And if so, then you want that. And if the original version of you also wants that, then there's a mutual desire, and you have just created something. The person that will actually change, because you have changed also as that person and as yourself, because there's something that in between you two, that there's some coherence, equilibrium. Now that you will be able to enjoy that common vision and that common thing, now that you are connected in coherence. Without this, it's not going to work. It's going to be conflict based and all these other things. Does that make sense? And it is a type of listening, it is a type of seeing with your heart, and the person may say some words and whatever, but these words you can clearly be stemming from pain, but they have to say them because that's their belief, and and whatever that is. But you cannot, you don't hear the words. You're listening to their heart, to that energy, and if it's quite intense or whatever, then you go with that and find the golden lining until that thing becomes right. And you can take any kind of state of consciousness and put it back in the coherence. Now, what does that do to you? You walk through life feeling peaceful and blissful, in contrast to all these other people. You don't have to avoid the negative people. You don't have to do any of that thing. Understand? You are in bliss about everybody. The most darkest person, the most brightest person, it does not matter. That what gives you an authority of creating life in your vision, which is going to be obviously in a mutual vision of others, because they are you and you are them, not in mind, because in mind we're always different, but in the essence, that coherence is going to be the same. And it does take time for the person to arrive in equilibrium. Once you establish coherence, it takes time for the person to arrive into the equilibrium. I've just noticed that to be the case. Where they're sort of like independently from you are seeking the state of coherence. So the people usually, they would ask you to show them how to calibrate their consciousness. And others may never ask you, and that may be okay. They may just go full on Luciferian, but that's okay also, because that will catalyze your alchemy. You still accomplish the coherence, and you still be moving into equilibrium whether you like it or not. Only then, the correctness of the world could be functioning and working. This is what like everybody wanted to create a perfect system that everybody is happy, and it just creates more problems. It's because the coherence has not been established first. The ancients knew this, They did the best thing to establish coherence first by building these pyramids and alchemizing these energies. They knew that the coherence must be there first before they can build a harmonious civilization. They knew it. But I don't know what the fuck happened. Then I think there's something happened. I don't know what happened, but it was corrupted, and that coherence was lost. And once the coherence is lost, that's it. The civilization has to go, as a coping mechanism, it has to go Babylonian. So, no longer paradise, but the Babylon. But that Babylonian triggers again the need for coherence. And in fact, like, if you look at this life as a video game, this particular environment right now, it's ripe with accelerated growth of your soul and development of your consciousness. This is what provides, like, it's fertile grounds, because a lot of manure out there, very fertile grounds to mine your gems. Okay? All right, guys. Thanks for watching. Hope you enjoyed it. Peace, and I'll see you in the next one.